So, man has always been innovating, trying to go the next mile, trying to be the next persuasion.
Cars.
Man has always tried to be the next.
Cars.
Man has always.
Cars.
You want to talk about cars?
Oh, we're talking about cars today.
All right. So, this is the Oxymoron Podcast. I'm your host, Kia Haas, and I'm here with my annoying, interrupting co-host,
Cars.
Casanova. And today we're talking about cars. In fact, we are asking the question,
Are we in a modern sense golden age of vehicle innovation and production?
cars.
Exactly.
Okay, so remember to please like, subscribe, and share, and let's get into this.
Cars.
So, what do you think? What are your first initial thoughts when talking about production of automobiles? Do you think we're in the golden age? Do you think we're in the silver age? And what parameters do you define these by? So why are we in the golden age versus not the golden age? Because typically in stuff, the golden age is either the best or it's the first.
Well, with cars, I would say the 40s through 60s to like late 60s, through the late 60s was one of the golden ages in automobile history, just due to the amount of innovation, the styling. It was just a very big thing, and it has been since. It's one of the things that really started that and helped with that. And of course, you see a few exceptions, like Group B Rally was a big part in the 80s and all, but for the most part, that was 40s through late 60s. And then now you're starting to see some of the nice styling, or you start to see more of the very visually appealing styling coming back, and technological innovations that we weren't seeing as much before. And part of this was through when you get to the 70s and 80s, due to a lot of the emissions stuff starting to come down, where you had stricter emissions and cats, and you end up with vehicles with 350 V8s or 350 cubic inches. For you people viewing using the metric system, I don't know what that translates to in liters. It's
7.
No, I think it's like 5. It's close to like 5.9, but it's
Cars.
somewhere around there. Exactly. But it's somewhere around there in size. End up only putting out about 205 US horsepower, because we don't use the metric system here, so kind of sucks if you use the metric system. I don't know what to tell you. But anyways, and that's a fairly low number, since a crate engine 350 V8 will, without emission stuff on it, will end up producing just a little bit under 300, if not about 300 horsepower.
I have no idea what you just said.
I figured.
So yeah, we're switching roles a little bit on today. I'm being more of the uninformed.
This is what it feels like.
This feels like.
Oh yeah.
Oh god.
But you see, as long as you have a great ability to wing it, you'll be fine.
Cars?
Basically.
So with all the stuff you said in mind, where what do you think is the pinnacle of the golden age? Like what is the golden age striving for? And once it hits that, it will decline. That's just how the curves work.
Yes.
What have we hit that pinnacle yet? Are we on the slope downward?
I would say for the modern sense, because I kind of think the 40s through late 60s, like I said earlier, was a golden age, but I think we're in another sort of golden age. But I think we were getting fairly close to that pinnacle. With cars, you're just getting better and better. Eventually, somewhere is going to kind of give, and I think fairly soon, in my own opinion, it might, and probably be downhill for a little bit afterwards.
Because typically with these types of things, we have the golden age typically is not the very first, but it's the first real great part, and then we get into what's called the silver age, which personally I think with car manufacturing stuff, I think we're actually in the bronze age. So I think the golden age was more of the 60s. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'll probably be wrong about this. The more of the not kind of the outlandish, kind of weirder looking cars, but we're still these massive tanks, not literally, but these really,
I get what you're saying, yeah.
but these really, these really somewhat kind of weird looking cars.
So you end up with like the bigger Cadillacs, like
The really big Cadillacs. They're just these
with the Rivieras and
that
stuff
are
like that.
these gas guzzling monsters. These these things, and then you get those. And then what happens next is you get more of like what I refer to as the Silver Age, which I think happened more in the 80s.
I would say 80s to honestly early 2000s.
Yeah, because you get like the stuff like the very classic, and I could be wrong on this, like the very iconic newer Mustangs.
No, that would be that'd be 90s.
Well, I'm saying 80s to 2000s.
Oh, yes.
Would be the Silver Age.
Yes. Okay, I thought you were talking about just 80s.
No, 80s on. So we got 60s
You get a
to
little bit,
80s.
You get a little bit of the newer style of
Yeah.
Mustangs. Yeah.
So you get 60s to 80s is the golden age, which has its pinnacle pretty much in the middle.
My opinion, to be 40s to through the late 60s, because when you get to the 70s, gas crisis hits and then emissions hit, and you end up with a lot lower horsepower cars that aren't really graded much, but they conserve fuel due to the problem.
That's very true. But to me, I'm thinking that that's more of because I'm trying to put it with along the lines of like comic books. I don't know if you read me your comic books.
Not really.
But it's very similar, and I think we can categorize the same way because they tend to be honestly kind of treated the same way that they're collector things, and I think they're treated a lot of the similar ways. But the thing with this is that those really early cars, even though they were really good cars, and you can ramble on about the statistics and details about them, but I think those were so early on that they weren't yet up to the golden age. But we could draw the line a little sooner, maybe in the 50s. I think would probably be even more accurate.
I could definitely agree with you in the 50s. You end up with
but like
a lot of innovation.
To me, like
there.
the 40s was too soon for them to really be that good. Because I think even in the 40s, I think a lot of the cars were still, some of them were still, not didn't even have a power steering.
You don't see power steering until like late 70s, I think.
That's all I'm saying. Like,
but power steering wasn't. I mean, in a sense, that just goes on with modern advancements. Just like you don't see dual clutch transmissions, I don't think until late 2000s.
But I think with that is like
early
something
2010s.
But something like power steering is like it's pretty basic of a concept.
Sure, so are power brakes, but you end up with drum brakes for the longest time. You even see some of that in the 90s to early 2000s stuff for the rear brakes being drum.
So that's why I'm saying that, like, us defining it by this, I don't think we're in the golden age or the silver age. I think we're in the bronze age or possibly even the new age.
I think we can agree with new age. We'll run with new age from now. I like that.
Because there's so many different things. Because I think like the early 40s and some of the 50s is still really, although some of the, I think maybe we can say that it starts in the 50s. The golden age possibly starts in the 50s. And then you get these kind of, these 20 to 30 year increments of these ages. And within these ages, you get their peaks, then they decline. And obviously, within that, some of them will be longer. Like, I think the golden age is probably the longest of them because of the peak being what it is and how it, went down.
I would agree with that, yeah.
And that, I think the silver age is probably actually one of the shorter ones because I think it starts probably maybe even in the mid 80s, goes up and probably declines right about the start of the millennium. And that being, maybe 16, 17 years compared to the previous one, which was probably 30 to 32. And that we are right now, I personally think we're in the bronze age of cars, and that we have already hit that pinnacle of the mass of just being technologically advanced. And I think and you probably won't agree with me on this, and because of what this particular advancement is. I think the advancement that we hit that is pinnacle is the integration of the cameras in the back of cars.
I don't know if that's pinnacle. To me, more pinnacle would be self-driving technology, probably.
I think that's going to be a focus of the new age, which is the next one to come really soon.
I could see where you're saying that there, yeah. Backup cameras is big. I would say parking sensors are big. Continuously variable transmissions are big. Of course, dual clutch transmissions not being a very new thing now, but are still fairly big. Auto parking, I don't know too many car companies use that. I know Ford does.
Yeah.
But there's a few debatable points on what's big, but I wouldn't say backup cameras aren't part of it. I would say it's definitely part of it.
I think the reason why they're so they're big is because once they hit the market, they hit the market hard.
Yeah, I would agree that they're definitely widely used.
Like,
but I'd say parking sensors are almost the same now.
That's true too. But I think for the most part, other types of, advancements in cars weren't so widely adapted. When you talk about like you said earlier with, cars that had power, what's the
steering?
Term? Not steering.
Brakes?
Power brakes. These cars that had power brakes, the technology existed for a while, and some of them used it, but a lot were like, "No, I'm good."
Well, they moved to power brakes, but they didn't. Not all of them completely got rid of drum brakes.
Yeah,
a lot of car companies kept that in the rear for a
lot of them get these
long amount of time.
Yeah, a lot of them get these fads. So a lot of these get these different types of fads, and within these different types of fads, you get ones that are in there. But I think the fact that it latched on so quickly, and any car that's been made after that hit the market has it. I don't know any of them that are coming out that don't, is my biggest point with that. And I think it's not just that particular advancement. I think it's that issue of advancements that happened all around the same time.
Another pinnacle innovation I would say for this time would be active aerodynamics. Now, a good example of this I would say would be the Porsche Panamera. Porsche, if you are a true fan, want to be real anal about it. But anyways, with that, you have a wing that fits in a smaller spot but pops up and then opens once it is up. And it's a fairly innovative design that I like. Even more
just like you.
Yeah. Even more innovative than that would be the any of the Pagani Huayras. With those, you have actual flaps like you have on airplanes or aircraft, I guess I would say, on the front and rear of the car that move up and down to regular airflow to give you more downforce on the inside or outside of the corner depending on what you're doing, and to help keep the car more stable. And it's one of the more advanced systems in my eyes. And then you get really crazy stuff like the DRS with F1 cars and all, but that's a whole different ball game.
So when I talk, is that what you do? Is you just do what I do and just kind of zone out?
Yeah, basically. Not all. It depends on what we're doing video-wise.
Oh
yeah, most definitely. That on anything I don't know much about, just wing it. Fake it until you make it.
Yeah. So I have another question. So do you think that the production of cars is an economic production advancement, or do you think it is just a consumer advancement?
I would say it has to be a little bit of both. With the modern technology with assembly line, cars are being able to be made faster. And with that, you can produce more in a given amount of time. The less time it takes you to produce something, theoretically, the cheaper you can market it for labor cost and stuff like that. And I'd say more people are buying cars than... Well, no, I'd say the amount of people percentage-wise is probably roughly similar. May have even gone down a little bit, but it's probably not ridiculously different. But the total number of people in general buying cars has gone up as population's gone up.
Okay. Another question is, would you consider this is kind of far off a little bit, but would you consider a horse and carriage to be the first resemblance of cars that would get their own type of category?
For me, the car would have to be machine powered, as in some of the first cars were actually steam powered. They weren't very effective. They weren't very fast, but with that was probably where I would draw the start. I mean, they are horse carriages with basically like a steam engine on it, but in my sense, you'd have to take the animal and living part out of it and make it an inanimate object.
Okay.
For that to be.
Another, I guess not necessarily a follow-up to that, but so we're talking about just automobiles, but do you think that these advancements, I'm getting a little bit more of a bigger picture with this, so do you think these advancements in cars are standalone, or do you think that they reflect the time? So do you think that advancements in cars, not only nicer cars, probably a nicer economy, but not necessarily that, but that when the society advances, their cars advance in proportion to that. So do you think a better way to put that, do you think it is the cars get advancements just because it's time for them to advance, or do you think they advance along the lines of what people are doing? That makes sense.
A little bit of both. I mean, as time progresses, car companies learn more. There's more scientific data on how they can make their cars better in different categories. And to try to one up the competition, they're going to use that. And then consumers start expecting more as time progresses because it's been so long since this has been out. There's got to be something better. So I'd say the consumer market progresses along with time, and that also progresses along with the development of cars due to the technology readily available.
Okay. So within that type of a motive, do you think that if the car advances in technology, do you think that the people respond negatively to, maybe advancements isn't a good way to put it. Do you think changes made in like the types of cars affect how much money is funneled into it?
In a sense, yes. And with the more advancement, you normally see the price of the car itself end up increasing too. And then also when it comes to certain advancements, they suit different types of people. Like most car enthusiasts that enjoy driving aren't a big fan of the Tesla Autopilot because they truly like to be in control and drive the car themselves. But people and fans of the Tesla Autopilot aren't as fans of the older style due to it's not as new and innovative. It's just sort of the style of person is one of the things that determines that. But the price of the car itself normally increases with the amount of development. So in general, yes.
So with that in mind, do you think that what are your thoughts initially on electric cars?
Well, there's a lot to be said about electric cars. Would I 100% say they are the way forward? In some senses, maybe. But the thing I have with electric cars is people talk about how they're so much better for the environmental. And in some ways they are. But if you look at what it takes to produce lithium batteries for electric cars and the lithium mines, that's fairly bad for the environment. Mining is in normally general bad for the environment. So they have their cons too. And then when it comes to the range of an electric car, it's not very good. And then when you have to charge an electric car, that takes normally a few hours compared to what does it take you at a gas station, like 5 minutes? Something around there.
So a lot of, like you said, electric cars are the various things you mentioned. But how do you feel about cars? Because I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was you said that people enjoy driving. What do you think about self-driving cars? Do you think that those are an evil? Do you think those are a good thing? How do you think about people phasing out the idea of people being the ones that control the wheel?
In a sense, there's pros and cons. Me as a person, I don't want to like it because I truly enjoy driving for the joy of driving, and I like the control aspect that I'm controlling the car. But statistically speaking, the self-driving cars are better in the sense that they don't make errors like people do. So from a safety and a statistics standpoint, they do seem to be the way forward. But from a personal standpoint, as someone who likes to drive, I don't like that thought.
Yeah, I think that will be the big point in new age. In fact, I think maybe we might possibly already be in the early stages of the new age, because I think that new age in cars is going to all be about them trying to perfect self-driving.
The problem with that right now is it's not readily available in most cars, and the price of the cars that have this is astonishing, and the production numbers are low. If you look at cars made by Tesla, there's people that wait 5 years on a waiting list just to get a Tesla. They're not mass produced compared to other vehicles. They're not as readily available, and the price of these vehicles, I don't know too many modern Teslas are not upwards of $100,000.
Yeah. So we want to know what your thoughts are on the topic. And did you understand anything he said? Because I didn't. For today's quick question,
it's okay. This was for a very selective audience, so
For today's quick question, we want to know: do you think that? What are your thoughts on self-driving cars? Let's make it an easy, understandable question. Do you love them or do you hate them? Or somewhere in the middle? You got 3 options.
Also in the comments, I'd like to know personally who enjoys the car-themed stuff. I'm just trying to feel the audience out here. See who wants to hear more car-themed stuff, or do you hate car-themed stuff and not want to hear any more of that?
I actually kind of liked hearing you talk about it. I didn't understand a lot of it, but
I could get more into how all that works too. There's an easier explanation.
Yeah, I think it was pretty cool. And I really liked how we were able to bring in some stuff that, was a little bit different because we typically talk about a lot of stuff that's more philosophical or whatever. This one was a bit more straightforward, and I think that it's a good thing to mention that technology as itself, and like I guess bringing it more back to the philosophy, that people are always trying to urge towards that idea of stuff being more and more advanced, and along the lines of that, we want to urge towards certain ideas, certain concepts or whatever, and that we categorize stuff that way. And what does it have to do about cars? Especially if you're into this, because it's really about cars. The thing with that it has to do about cars is that a lot of people they're into cars typically identify themselves within their car. It's just like a thing that people take respect in seeing a nice car or various things along the lines of that. And I think that we need to keep in mind that cars and technology are always advancing, and that we are just living in an amazing time. I guess is the best way to put it, that we should be glad that we're able to be around the time that we are because of how amazing a lot of this stuff is. Some people say, no, well, it's not good for this, but honestly, for me to be alive, to see like VHSs be a thing, and also see the invention of smartphones, it's just amazing to see how cars or how cars are adapting in my lifetime. It's pretty cool to me. So this has been the Oxymoron Podcast. I'm Kios. The guy that rambled a lot was named Casanova, and thank you for listening.